The quantum slip drive hummed with a frequency that seemed to vibrate between reality and possibility. Captain Elena Rodriguez felt the subtle shift as the Defiance transitioned from controlled space into the contested sector. Navigation displays flickered with probability matrices, each potential trajectory calculated and recalculated thousands of times per second. Lieutenant David Wong, the ship's primary tactical officer, leaned forward at his station. His neural interface projected holographic data streams directly into his field of vision, parsing information faster than any traditional display could manage. "Approaching Gerald Grand Armada perimeter," he announced. "Quantum signature maintaining optimal stealth configuration." The vast emptiness of space slowly populated with an impossible number of vessels. 10,000 warships stretched across multiple light years, a metallic constellation of destruction that had systematically erased countless civilizations. Each Gerald vessel was a monument to technological brutality. Massive constructs of armored alloys and weapon systems that could obliterate planetary networks with a single coordinated strike. Dr. Marcus Chen monitored the ship's adaptive systems from his station. "Quantum resonance field is stable," he reported. "Our molecular adaptive hull is processing environmental data faster than the Gerald sensors can even initiate a primary scan." Elena studied the tactical display. The Gerald fleet was arranged in a complex geometric formation that spoke to centuries of refined combat doctrine. Massive dreadnoughts formed the central core, surrounded by layers of support vessels, each positioned with mathematical precision. It was a formation that had crushed hundreds of civilizations, a strategy so effective that most species surrendered the moment the fleet emerged from slip space. The Gerald communication networks began to buzz with confusion. Their translation algorithms struggled with the unexpected presence of a single, relatively small vessel. Intercepted communications revealed a mixture of derision and uncertainty. "Single vessel detected in Sector 9 Gamma," a Gerald communication officer reported. "Scanning protocols unable to obtain comprehensive data signature." The fleet's primary command vessel, a massive construct that resembled a floating citadel more than a traditional spacecraft, began to focus its advanced sensor arrays on the Defiance. Multilayered energy fields extended from its hull, designed to dissect and analyze any incoming information. Elena's hands moved with practiced precision across the ship's neural interface. "Initiate first contact protocol," she commanded. Lieutenant Wong raised an eyebrow. "They're not exactly known for diplomatic conversations." "We're not here to have a conversation," Elena responded, her voice calm and precise. "We're here to make a statement." The communication transmission went out, translated through multiple quantum encryption layers that would ensure clarity while preventing any potential data corruption. "This is Captain Elena Rodriguez of the United Earth ship Defiance. Your expansion ends today." The response was immediate and predictable. Gerald communication channels erupted with a cacophony of signals. Translation matrices worked overtime to process the unexpected transmission. "Unidentified vessel," came the official response. "You are in restricted space. Surrender or be eliminated." Dr. Chen's fingers danced across his control panel. "They're attempting to lock primary targeting systems," he reported. "Watch this." The Defiance began to move in a pattern that defied traditional understanding of spaceflight. Where most ships followed linear trajectories or predictable approach vectors, this vessel seemed to exist in multiple potential locations simultaneously. Quantum mechanics transformed from a theoretical concept into a practical navigation system. Gerald targeting computers struggled. Each time they calculated a potential firing solution, the ship had already shifted its quantum signature. It was like trying to catch liquid mercury with a fishing net. Impossible and fundamentally incomprehensible. "They're confused," Lieutenant Wong said, a hint of admiration in his voice. "Our movement patterns are completely outside their tactical understanding." Elena watched the fleet's formation begin to subtly shift. Centuries of conquest had made the Gerald confident, almost complacent. They were used to being the most technologically advanced force in any conflict. The concept of an unknown variable was something they had forgotten how to process. "Maintain approach vector," she commanded. "Let them wonder." The Defiance continued its impossible journey, a single black point moving through the vast metallic armada. To the Geril, it must have seemed like a mathematical error, a glitch in their sophisticated sensor arrays. They would soon learn it was anything but a glitch. Humanity had arrived. The bridge of the Defiance hummed with a different kind of energy, not the tension of fear, but the electric anticipation of calculated potential. Captain Alina Rodriguez watched the Geril fleet's response unfold like a complex mathematical equation solving itself in real time. Lieutenant David Wong's neural interface projected tactical data in layers of holographic complexity. "They're attempting distributed targeting," he reported. "Multiple secondary vessels are trying to triangulate our position, but our quantum signature is preventing clean target acquisition." Dr. Marcus Chen monitored the ship's adaptive systems, his fingers dancing across holographic interfaces that seemed to breathe and shift with living intelligence. "Our molecular adaptive hull is doing more than just avoiding detection," he explained. "It's actively rewriting its own quantum state faster than their sensors can process changes." The Geril fleet represented the pinnacle of technological conquest. Each vessel was a marvel of engineering. Massive constructs that had systematically reduced hundreds of civilizations to resource extraction zones. Their weapons could shatter planetary cores. Their energy shields could withstand direct bombardment from entire planetary defense networks. But they had never encountered a system that didn't just resist, but fundamentally challenged their understanding of spatial mechanics. "Incoming energy convergence," Lieutenant Wong announced. "Multiple vessels preparing coordinated strike." Alina's response was immediate. "Redistribute quantum resonance," she commanded. The ship wasn't just avoiding the attack, it was preparing to transform the incoming energy into something entirely unexpected. The first wave of Geril weapons fired. Energy beams that could slice through reinforced planetary shields erupted from hundreds of vessels, converging on the single human ship. To the alien fleet, it must have looked like an overwhelming, mathematically precise execution. Instead, something extraordinary happened. The energy beams seemed to pass through the Defiance, but not in any traditional sense of penetration. The ship's adaptive hull began to interact with the incoming energy at a molecular level, breaking down the weapon's signatures, analyzing their fundamental frequencies, and then, most surprisingly, began to absorb and redistribute the energy. Dr. Chen's voice carried a mixture of scientific excitement and strategic calm. "Our adaptive matrix is converting their weapon signatures into additional power. They're quite literally fueling our defensive capabilities with their own attack." On the primary Geril command vessel, confusion began to replace their initial confidence. Communication channels buzzed with increasingly urgent exchanges. Their tactical AI systems were reporting impossible data, a single vessel that not only survived their coordinated strike, but seemed to be gaining energy from the attack. Energy absorption at 237% of initial projection, Lieutenant Wong reported. "We're generating more power from their attacks than our primary quantum generators could produce in a standard mission cycle." Alina studied the tactical display. The human approach was fundamentally different from any known spacefaring strategy. Where most civilizations saw combat as a matter of overwhelming force, humans viewed it as a complex system of adaptive problem-solving. The Geril fleet began to adjust its tactics. Secondary vessels started to maneuver, attempting to create more complex attack patterns. Their communication networks suggested a growing sense of uncertainty, a feeling most unusual for a species that had conquered hundreds of civilizations. "They're trying to develop a more dynamic attack configuration," Dr. Chen observed. "But our predictive algorithms are 3 steps ahead of their tactical recalibration." Indeed, the Defiance moved with an almost intuitive grace. Each quantum shift was not just a defensive maneuver, but a strategic statement. The ship wasn't simply avoiding attacks, it was demonstrating the fundamental difference between technological possession and true technological understanding. Lieutenant Wang's neural interface began to project potential outcome scenarios. Each projection showed increasingly complex strategic options, the ship's adaptive systems learning and evolving with every millisecond of interaction. "They've never encountered a system that learns this quickly," he said, a note of professional admiration in his voice. Alina watched the tactical display, seeing beyond the immediate confrontation. This was more than a battle. It was a philosophical argument written in the language of physics and quantum mechanics. Humanity was demonstrating that true technological mastery wasn't about power, but about understanding. The Geril fleet continued its assault, each attack becoming more desperate, more complex. And with each moment, the Defiants continued to transform their strength into an unexpected vulnerability. The rising action was just beginning. The quantum resonance weapon activated with a precision that defied conventional understanding of physics. It wasn't a weapon in the traditional sense. No explosive payload, no massive energy discharge, no conventional destructive mechanism that any known civilization could comprehend. Dr. Marcus Chen's hands moved with surgical precision across the holographic interface. Initiating molecular disassembly sequence, he announced, his voice carrying a mixture of scientific wonder and strategic focus. Captain Alina Rodriguez watched the tactical display with calm concentration. The Geril fleet, which had systematically conquered hundreds of civilizations, was about to experience something entirely beyond their comprehension. The weapon worked by understanding, not by destroying. Where traditional weapons sought to break apart matter through brute force, this system negotiated with the fundamental quantum structures that held matter together. It was less an attack and more a complex conversation with the very fabric of physical existence. Lieutenant David Wang's neural interface projected intricate probability matrices. "Molecular coherence fields are stabilizing," he reported. "We're not destroying their ships. We're systematically unraveling their molecular structures." On the primary Geril command vessel, confusion transformed into a growing sense of existential terror. Their most advanced sensor arrays struggled to comprehend what was happening. Ships weren't being damaged in any traditional sense. They were simply coming apart at the molecular level. "Molecular bonds are being selectively destabilized," Dr. Chen explained, his fingers tracing complex quantum algorithms. "We're not breaking their ships. We're essentially asking the molecules to forget how to be a ship." The first Geril vessel began to disassemble. Not with an explosion, not with a dramatic burst of energy, but with a quiet, almost elegant deconstruction. Massive sections of the ship began to separate, molecular structures losing their cohesive properties. It was like watching a complex machine slowly forget its own design. Alina understood the deeper philosophical statement they were making. This wasn't about destruction. It was about demonstrating a fundamental difference in technological approach. "Communication channels are in complete disarray," Lieutenant Wang reported. The Geril communication networks, which had always relied on absolute hierarchical control, began to fracture. Panic spread faster than information, a very human response that their rigid biological systems had never anticipated. Dr. Chen's voice carried a note of scientific excitement. "Our quantum resonance is essentially asking the molecular structures to reimagine themselves. We're not breaking physics. We're having a conversation with physics." The Geril commanders watched in horror. Their entire tactical doctrine, developed over millennia of galactic conquest, was built on the premise of overwhelming force. They understood weapons that destroyed, shields that protected, energy systems that powered massive destructive capabilities. This was something else entirely. One by one, Geril vessels began to lose structural integrity, not through explosive decompression or traditional weapon damage, but through a systematic, almost gentle deconstruction. Massive warships that had been the terrifying symbols of galactic conquest were slowly coming apart like complex puzzles losing their cohesion. "Molecular disassembly is proceeding at 97.3% efficiency," Lieutenant Wang reported. "They're not just losing ships. They're losing the very concept of their ships." Alina watched the tactical display with a sense of profound understanding. Humanity had been pushed to the brink of extinction, forced to reimagine technological potential at its most fundamental level. Where other civilizations saw limitations, humans saw opportunities for radical innovation. The Geril communication channels erupted with a cacophony of signals. Translation matrices worked overtime to process the impossible information. Entire command structures were collapsing, not through direct attack, but through a fundamental challenge to their understanding of physical reality. Dr. Chen's voice was calm, almost philosophical. We're not destroying their fleet. We're demonstrating that technology is less about power and more about understanding. Massive warships continued to disassemble. Thousands of vessels that had represented the pinnacle of galactic conquest were slowly losing their structural integrity, not through violence, but through a complex quantum negotiation that reimagined the very nature of matter. One ship was dismantling their entire strategic framework through an understanding of physics that redefined technological potential. The turning point had arrived. The bridge of the Defiance transformed into a living ecosystem of technological innovation. Dr. Marcus Chen's neural interfaces pulsed with layers of adaptive algorithms that seemed to breathe and evolve with each passing millisecond. Biological learning systems are reaching unprecedented levels of integration, he announced, his voice a mixture of scientific excitement and strategic calm. The ship's computational systems were unlike anything in known galactic technology, a hybrid of artificial intelligence and something far more dynamic. Captain Elena Rodriguez watched the ongoing deconstruction of the Geril fleet with a calculated gaze. The ship's systems were doing more than simply responding to threats. They were learning, adapting, and reimagining their own operational parameters in real time. Lieutenant David Wong's neural interface projected tactical scenarios that shifted and recalibrated faster than traditional computing systems could even initiate a primary scan. Our predictive matrices are three-dimensional, he explained. We're not just calculating potential outcomes. We're exploring entire probability landscapes. The core innovation wasn't in the weapons or the defensive systems. It was in the fundamental approach to technological intelligence. Where most civilizations created artificial intelligence as a tool, humans had developed a system that was more akin to a living, learning organism. Dr. Chen pulled up a holographic representation of the ship's neural network. Traditional AI systems have fixed learning parameters, he explained to Elena. They're essentially sophisticated decision trees. Our system doesn't just learn, it reimagines its own operational framework with each interaction. The Defiance's computational core was a marvel of biological-inspired engineering. Drawing from human neuroplasticity, the system could create new neural pathways, discard inefficient computational models, and generate entirely new approaches to problem-solving in microseconds. Tactical adaptation is proceeding at 342% of projected efficiency, Lieutenant Wong reported. Each attack by the remaining Geril vessels was not just defended against, it was studied, understood, and transformed into a learning opportunity. Elena understood the deeper philosophical statement they were making. This wasn't just a technological breakthrough. It was a fundamental reimagining of intelligence itself. The ship's systems began to display characteristics that went beyond traditional artificial intelligence. It wasn't just processing information. It was interpreting, contextualizing, and generating entirely new approaches to problem-solving. Dr. Chen's fingers danced across holographic interfaces that seemed to pulse with living intelligence. We've essentially created a computational system that thinks more like a collective human mind than a traditional computer, he explained. It doesn't just calculate. It imagines. Tactical scenarios that would have taken traditional military AI systems hours to process were being explored, evaluated, and discarded in milliseconds. The Defiance was generating millions of potential strategies, learning from each potential outcome, and refining its approach with unprecedented speed. Our predictive models are showing something extraordinary, Lieutenant Wong said, his neural interface projecting complex probability matrices. We're not just defending or attacking. We're essentially having a mathematical conversation with the fundamental nature of the conflict. The remaining Jarul vessels continued their assault, each attack becoming more desperate, more complex. And with each moment, the Defiants continued to transform their strength into an unexpected vulnerability. Alina watched the tactical display, seeing beyond the immediate confrontation. This was more than a battle. It was a philosophical argument written in the language of physics, computational theory, and adaptive intelligence. Dr. Chen's voice carried a note of profound understanding. "We're demonstrating that true technological mastery isn't about power," he said. "It's about understanding, adaptation, and the ability to reimagine fundamental constraints." The ship's computational core continued to evolve. Each millisecond brought new insights, new potential approaches, new ways of understanding the conflict. It was learning at a rate that would have been impossible for any traditional artificial intelligence. Lieutenant Wang's neural interface began to project increasingly complex strategic options. The tactical scenarios became less about direct conflict and more about a dynamic, evolving conversation of technological potential. "They've never encountered a system that learns this quickly," he said, a note of professional admiration in his voice. The strategic breakthrough was more than a technological achievement. It was a statement about the fundamental nature of intelligence, adaptation, and human potential. The Defiance continued its impossible journey, a living testament to humanity's extraordinary capacity for innovation. The remaining Jarul ships launched a desperate, concentrated assault that would have obliterated any known civilization. Thousands of energy weapons converged, enough firepower to shatter entire planetary networks, reduce continents to molten slag, and erase entire technological civilizations from existence. Captain Alina Rodriguez stood perfectly still, her posture a study in calculated calm. "Redistribute quantum adaptive fields," she commanded, her voice cutting through the intense bridge atmosphere. Lieutenant David Wang's neural interface projected a dazzling array of tactical scenarios. Incoming energy convergence at 982% of standard weapon capacity, he reported. To any other vessel, such an assault would mean certain annihilation. For the Defiance, it was an opportunity. Dr. Marcus Chen monitored the ship's adaptive systems, his fingers dancing across holographic interfaces that seemed to breathe with living intelligence. "Our quantum adaptive hull is not just defending," he explained. "We're engaging in a fundamental conversation with the incoming energy." The first wave of weapons struck. Instead of destruction, something extraordinary happened. The Defiance's hull began to interact with the incoming energy at a molecular level. Each weapon signature was instantaneously analyzed, its fundamental frequency decoded, its kinetic and potential energy mapped with impossible precision. "Energy absorption increasing," Lieutenant Wang announced. "We're generating 427% more power than our primary quantum generators could produce in a standard mission cycle." The Jarul command vessels watched in growing horror. Their most devastating weapons were being transformed into a source of additional power. It was as if the human ship was metabolizing their attacks, turning pure destructive potential into a form of sustenance. Alina understood the deeper strategic implication. This wasn't just defense, it was a complete reimagining of technological conflict. Dr. Chen's voice carried a mixture of scientific wonder and strategic insight. "We're demonstrating that energy is a language," he said, "and we're having a comprehensive conversation with the fundamental physics of destruction." The ship's adaptive systems worked on multiple levels simultaneously. Incoming energy was not just absorbed but carefully redistributed. Weapon signatures were broken down, analyzed, and transformed. The Defiance was treating the massive assault not as an attack, but as a complex mathematical problem to be solved. Tactical neural networks are generating millions of potential response scenarios per microsecond, Lieutenant Wang reported. The ship's computational core was exploring entire landscapes of potential interactions, learning and adapting with each millisecond of conflict. The Jarul fleet's communication channels erupted in a cacophony of confusion. Their most advanced weapons, developed over centuries of galactic conquest, were being rendered completely ineffective. Worse, Those same weapons were now powering the very ship they sought to destroy. Alina watched the tactical display with a sense of profound understanding. Humanity had been pushed to the brink of extinction, forced to reimagine technological potential at its most fundamental level. Where other civilizations saw limitations, humans saw opportunities for radical innovation. Dr. Chen pulled up holographic representations of the energy interactions. "We're not just defending," he explained. "We're engaging in a complex negotiation with the fundamental nature of energy and matter." The remaining Geril vessels continued their assault, each attack becoming more desperate, more complex. Massive energy weapons that could shatter planetary cores were being transformed into additional power for the human ship. "Adaptive resonance field at maximum efficiency," Lieutenant Wang announced. The ship was no longer just surviving the assault. It was thriving, growing stronger with each desperate attack. Alina's voice was calm, almost philosophical. "Continue energy redistribution," she commanded. The confrontation had become more than a battle. It was a statement about the nature of technological potential. The Defiance moved with an almost intuitive grace. Each quantum shift was not just a defensive maneuver, but a strategic statement. The ship wasn't simply avoiding attacks. It was demonstrating the fundamental difference between technological possession and true technological understanding. Massive warships continued to launch their most devastating weapons, and with each moment, the human ship continued to transform their strength into an unexpected vulnerability. The confrontation had become a complex mathematical argument, written in the language of physics and quantum mechanics. Humanity was writing its response to potential extinction. 17 minutes. That was all it took to dismantle the most powerful fleet in galactic history. The Defiance emerged pristine, its obsidian black hull humming with collected energy, a living testament to human innovation. Quantum communication networks began to pulse with impossible news. A single human ship had systematically dismantled the Geril Galactic Empire's mightiest fleet. Captain Alina Rodriguez stood motionless on the bridge, her gaze fixed on the expanding cloud of molecular dust that had once been thousands of advanced warships. Lieutenant David Wang's neural interface continued to process the aftermath, generating complex analytical reports. Dr. Marcus Chen approached Alina, his hand still moving across holographic interfaces that continued to analyze the unprecedented encounter. "Our computational models are showing something extraordinary," he said, excitement barely contained beneath his professional demeanor. The tactical display revealed the complete deconstruction of the Geril fleet, not through explosive destruction, but through a systematic, almost elegant dismantling of molecular structures. Where other civilizations saw conflict as a matter of overwhelming force, humans had transformed it into a complex dialogue of physics and potential. "Energy redistribution at peak efficiency," Lieutenant Wang reported. "We've converted 99.7% of the incoming weapon signatures into usable power. Our quantum generators are showing levels of capacity that exceed our initial design projections by several orders of magnitude." Alina understood the deeper implications. This wasn't just a victory. It was a comprehensive demonstration of human potential. Dr. Chen pulled up holographic representations of the molecular deconstruction process. "We didn't destroy their ships," he explained. "We essentially asked the molecular structures to reimagine themselves. It's less a weapon and more a complex conversation with the fundamental nature of matter." The ship's adaptive systems continued to process the encounter. Millions of potential scenarios were being analyzed, learned from, integrated into the ship's ever-evolving computational matrix. Each millisecond brought new insights, new understanding. "Quantum communication networks are going wild," Lieutenant Wang announced. "Multiple alien species are receiving fragmented reports of what just happened. Our encounter is being interpreted differently across various civilizations." Alina watched the tactical display, seeing beyond the immediate confrontation. The Geril fleet, a symbol of galactic conquest for centuries, had been systematically taken apart not through brute force, but through a fundamental understanding of physical systems that most civilizations couldn't even conceptualize. Dr. Chen's voice carried a note of profound scientific wonder. "We've demonstrated that technology is less about power and more about understanding," he said. "Our approach isn't about destruction. It's about comprehensive problem-solving." The Defiance's computational core continued to evolve. Each moment brought new layers of understanding, new potential approaches to technological challenges. It was learning at a rate that would have been impossible for any traditional artificial intelligence. Lieutenant Wang's neural interface projected complex probability matrices. "We've essentially rewritten the fundamental understanding of space combat," he observed. "This isn't just a military victory. It's a technological paradigm shift." Alina reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. Humanity had been pushed to the brink of extinction, forced to reimagine technological potential at its most fundamental level. Where other civilizations saw limitations, humans saw opportunities for radical innovation. The molecular dust of the defeated fleet continued to expand, a silent testament to the encounter. Quantum communication networks buzzed with fragmented reports, confusion, and a growing sense of something profound having occurred. "Preparing return trajectory," Lieutenant Wang announced. The ship's navigation systems began to calculate the most efficient path back to human-controlled space. Dr. Chen's final analysis was both scientific and philosophical. "We didn't just defeat a fleet," he said. "We demonstrated a fundamentally different approach to technological potential. Our victory wasn't about destruction. It was about understanding." The Defiance began its journey home, collecting and processing the massive amount of data generated during the encounter. Each millisecond brought new insights, new understanding of the complex interaction that had just occurred. Alina allowed herself a moment of reflection. This was more than a military engagement. It was a statement about human potential, about the extraordinary capacity for innovation that had defined their species. The quantum slip drive hummed to life, carrying with it the collected knowledge of an encounter that would reshape galactic understanding. Humanity had arrived. The journey back to human-controlled space was anything but quiet. Captain Alina Rodriguez recorded her mission log, her voice calm and measured, capturing the profound implications of their encounter with the Giral fleet. "Mission log, stardate 22-47-356, she began. "The Defiance has demonstrated more than our technological capabilities. We've presented a philosophical argument about the nature of intelligence, adaptation, and potential." Dr. Marcus Chen worked nearby, his neural interfaces projecting holographic analysis of the encounter. Layers of data danced around him: molecular interaction models, energy redistribution patterns, computational learning trajectories that defied conventional understanding. Lieutenant David Wang monitored the ship's systems, which continued to process the massive amount of information gathered during the confrontation. The computational core was not just storing data, it was actively learning, reimagining, evolving with each microsecond of analysis. "The encounter represents a fundamental shift in our understanding of technological conflict," Dr. Chen explained, pulling up complex visualizations. "We didn't just defeat a fleet. We engaged in a comprehensive dialogue with the fundamental nature of physics, energy, and intelligence." The ship's quantum adaptive hull continued to pulse with the energy collected during the battle. Where traditional vessels would have required extensive repairs, the Defiance seemed to be thriving, integrating the encounter into its very molecular structure. Alina understood the deeper significance. This was more than a military victory. It was a statement about human potential, about a species defined by curiosity, adaptability, and an unbreakable spirit of exploration. "Our approach isn't about conquest," she continued in her log. "It's about understanding. Where other civilizations see limitations, we see opportunities for radical innovation." The quantum communication networks continued to buzz with fragmented reports of the encounter. Multiple alien civilizations were struggling to comprehend what had occurred. A single human vessel had systematically dismantled the most powerful fleet in galactic history, not through overwhelming force, but through a fundamental reimagining of technological potential. Dr. Chen's analysis revealed layers of extraordinary insights. The Defiance's computational systems had not just defended against the Giral attack. They had engaged in a complex, multi-dimensional conversation with the very nature of energy and matter. "We've essentially demonstrated that technology is a language," he explained to Alina, "and we're becoming increasingly fluent in its most complex dialects." The Defiance began its journey home, collecting and processing the massive amount of data generated during the encounter. Each millisecond brought new insights, new understanding of the complex interaction that had just occurred. Alina allowed herself a moment of reflection. This was more than a military engagement. It was a statement about human potential, about the extraordinary capacity for innovation that had defined their species. The quantum slip drive hummed to life, carrying with it the collected knowledge of an encounter that would reshape galactic understanding. Humanity had arrived. The journey back to human-controlled space was anything but quiet. Captain Alina Rodriguez recorded her mission log, her voice calm and measured, capturing the profound implications of their encounter with the Giral fleet. Mission log, stardate 22-47-356, she began. "The Defiance has demonstrated more than our technological capabilities. We've presented a philosophical argument about the nature of intelligence, adaptation, and potential." Dr. Marcus Chen worked nearby, his neural interfaces projecting holographic analysis of the encounter. Layers of data danced around him: molecular interaction models, energy redistribution patterns, computational learning trajectories that defied conventional understanding. Lieutenant David Wong monitored the ship's systems, which continued to process the massive amount of information gathered during the confrontation. The computational core was not just storing data, it was actively learning, reimagining, evolving with each microsecond of analysis. The encounter represents a fundamental shift in our understanding of technological conflict, Dr. Chen explained, pulling up complex visualizations. "We didn't just defeat a fleet, we engaged in a comprehensive dialogue with the fundamental nature of physics, energy, and intelligence." The ship's quantum adaptive hull continued to pulse with the energy collected during the battle. Where traditional vessels would have required extensive repairs, the Defiance seemed to be thriving, integrating the encounter into its very molecular structure. Alina understood the deeper significance. This was more than a military victory. It was a statement about human potential, about a species defined by curiosity, adaptability, and an unbreakable spirit of exploration. "Our approach isn't about conquest," she continued in her log. "It's about understanding. Where other civilizations see limitations, we see opportunities for radical innovation." The quantum communication networks continued to buzz with fragmented reports of the encounter. Multiple alien civilizations were struggling to comprehend what had occurred. A single human vessel had systematically dismantled the most powerful fleet in galactic history, not through overwhelming force, but through a fundamental reimagining of technological potential. Dr. Chen's analysis revealed layers of extraordinary insights. The Defiance's computational systems had not just defended against the Giral attack. They had engaged in a complex, multi-dimensional conversation with the very nature of energy and matter. "We've essentially demonstrated that technology is a language," he explained to Alina, "and we're becoming increasingly fluent in its most complex dialects." Lieutenant Wong's neural interface projected probability matrices that continued to evolve. "The encounter has generated enough data to revolutionize our understanding of space combat, quantum mechanics, and adaptive intelligence," he reported. As distant star systems passed by the ship's quantum glass viewport, Alina reflected on the journey that had brought humanity to this moment. Pushed to the brink of extinction, forced to reimagine technological potential at its most fundamental level, they had discovered something profound. The ship was more than a technological marvel. It was a living testament to human potential, a statement about the extraordinary capacity for innovation that had defined their species throughout history. "We are not conquerors," Alina recorded in her final log entry. "We are explorers. Our strength lies not in our ability to destroy, but in our capacity to understand, to adapt, to reimagine the fundamental constraints of existence." Dr. Chen approached with a final analysis. The computational learning from this single encounter will take decades to fully process, he said. We've generated more technological insights in 17 minutes than most civilizations produce in centuries. The Defiance continued its journey, a black diamond against the starscape. Each moment brought new understanding, new potential, new ways of seeing the universe. Lieutenant Wong's final report captured the essence of their achievement. We didn't just survive, he said. We demonstrated that human potential is limited only by our capacity to imagine, to understand, to evolve. As human-controlled space grew closer, Alina allowed herself a moment of reflection. The galaxy had just been reminded of what humanity was capable of achieving. The whispers would spread. Stories of a ship, a civilization that didn't just resist, but fundamentally rewrote the rules of existence. The humans were exploring, and they were just getting started.